Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. We are going to do a watercolor fruit, kiwi and figs on a 2-page spread. And hopefully, don't forget to like and subscribe before I forget. Hopefully you guys will follow along possibly with whatever medium you want, watercolor or whatever you're using. So the first one on the left is the Kiwi that I've got up on the screen now. And so I always find it helpful to start out with the lightest parts and then work into the darker parts. And so I started in with the lightest in the middle, which was like buff titanium and a little bit of sap green. Over here, it's the same kind of color on the core of the figs there. So I'm going ahead and while one is drying, and especially when there's the same colors, kind of skipping back and forth to both pieces. So again, on this one, I'm doing the lightest colors and then letting that dry, and then going to go into the next lightest. So, but as you can see on the left-hand side, going with the lightest, and I kind of wanted around that middle part, it's a little bit darker around the outside. So that's where I added in a little bit more green and kind of went in secondary to put that in. So this is actually a sketchbook from Temu, which I was trying out. It's actually a good little sketchbook for practices and stuff like this. I think some people have said the paper was Bauhong. I'm not exactly sure. I know that I have a pad of Bauhong, and it is a great paper, especially to practice on. I mean, and arches grow all the way. That's my favorite. But I do use the Bauhong a lot, and it really does well in comparison to a lot of the other paper that I've tried in lieu of expensive arches. So here I'm going back and putting a little bit of green where the fig isn't all the way right. And so now going in with the lightest color of the green, kind of going in. So what I'm kind of doing is going in with the light colored green and then kind of picking back up, making sure it's nice and wet watercolor so that I can pick up a little bit more of the color around that middle part because it's a little bit lighter towards the middle. And then as it gets to the outside, it gets a little bit darker. So you'll see I lay this down and kind of go in with a little bit darker green around the outside, but then also picking up a little bit of the green towards the middle. At least I know I do it on the bottom one. Maybe the top one isn't as light. No, see here I'm trying to pick up a little bit next to the middle. I'm darkening up around where the outside of it, where that hairy and tan skin would be if we were looking at it from another angle. So here I'm doing the same thing down here, going in with a lighter green, and then going to get a little bit darker as I get to the outside, and going to pick up a little bit of the green that is closer to the seed. I don't know if I cut it out of the top when picking it up or if it's just a lot more noticeable on the full one at the bottom where put in a little bit more water, a little bit more paint so it's nice and watery, and then pick up some of the color. So, because I think it's not as green maybe on that one. Either way, I guess it works as long as you're putting some dark around the outside and or picking up some of the color as you get towards the inside where the seeds are. So yeah, I'm making sure it's nice and wet so that I can. That's the thing. This paper, for being a little it was fairly inexpensive. So here's what I'm talking about, where, you're picking up a little bit of that green so that it's not um, as dark as the outside. So you put some dark around the outside and also pick up some of the green on the inside. So again, jumping over to the pigs as we're letting that dry on the left side, going in doing some of the fleshy parts. The figs are interesting because they've got that, there's like a million little, it's like fleshy and little seeds in there. So you kind of start with the main like skin, like pinky skin color, and then kind of go back in and do the fleshy kind of seed color. So what is everybody else working on? Are you guys working on what we're doing here? Or are you working on another watercolor piece? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what everybody's working on. So one of my goals this year is so I've got this little sketchbook. I've got more sketchbooks than I'd like to admit. Like some are dedicated for watercolor because of the paper, and then others, are other media that I've been trying to play around with a lot more. And so this year I'm really going to finish sketchbooks. That's my goal this year, is to really, really work more in the sketchbooks and post a lot more of the sketchbooks. And I'd like to share that and bring you guys along with me while I finish a lot of these sketchbooks. And then big goal will be to do a sketchbook review. I've always wanted to do one, but I have yet to finish a complete sketchbook, which is sad because I've been drawing for a very long time. But I guess, different ones have different paper, and I like to try new stuff all the time, so I tend to skip around a bit. And so while there's some I started recently, there's some that are a lot older that I want to finish and not waste everything and use all the papers. So I'll be making some videos going over them, as well as there's some new supplies that I have, like the Neo Color 2 pastels. And so really, really trying to push hard to play around with some of these new supplies, because I've been teaching myself watercolor for many years now, and why I love it. It's fun to try new stuff every now and then. So here, I am using the Daniel Smith, the Daniel Smith purple, what's the name of it? That has got like some pink under. As it dries, you can kind of see the different shades of purple, and it kind of goes into pink, which is perfect because, as you can see in the picture, it's kind of two-toned, and it almost looks striped. Some of them do, as they go down. And so I'm going to let that dry a little bit and then come in with some darker of the purple and kind of accentuate those stripes, and kind of while also letting the watercolor kind of dry, where you can see both of those tones. Imperial Purple is the watercolor that I was talking about, that has kind of like the pink undertone that you can kind of see now, especially on that top one as it's drying. It kind of goes into like blues and pinks and purple, which is kind of perfect because it's really exactly how the figs look, especially on the picture. They've got some different tones in them, and so I'll try to accentuate a little bit of the stripes that you can see, but otherwise I'm kind of letting the watercolor do the work for me. So it's super important, like when you're doing, like that fig is butted up to the other fig. If I wouldn't have waited, then the color is going to run back into that fig, which sometimes you want it to. I tend to like work a little tighter with the watercolor, which is just, it's not good or bad. It's just, I tend to work a little tighter. I think I'm trying to release the perfectionist inside me and let the watercolor do more of its thing sometimes, but for the most part, I tend to control it very much. And so you got to be careful when you've got two things that are budding, just like the leaf. I made sure here coming in next, especially that light color skin when doing the leaf, if I wouldn't have waited, we would have lost that skin color because the green is going to flood right in here. So you can kind of see the drawing of the leaf underneath. And so what I'm trying to do is come in with the darker, because the leaf is kind of where the veins are actually lighter than the green. I don't know how successful I was because I was very, like I said, controlled in this leaf. I think it kind of comes out decent enough, but there might be some other ways to do it differently or better. Or I don't know if the colors or what have you, but while a little time consuming, I think it kind of achieved it for the most part. So the color green, I don't know, for the leaf that I picked there, I don't know if that's exactly perfect or exactly matching, but again, this is my picture, just kind of using the image loosely, right?
Well,
So as you can see here now, I am going in and putting some of the darker purple in kind of as a shadow, because it's darker behind that other fig. And here is where I kind of, I think that, you're kind of playing with not only making it darker, but trying to make, the stripes of where it's darker around the fig. And so that's what I'm doing in here. Somehow I lost the footage or deleted it at some point, apparently, the little where I was talking about the fleshy part on the figs. So that pink that I put in dried, and you can see I went in and just did little dots of like yellowish, orangish, to kind of represent the seeds and the fleshy bits and stuff. And so here again on this fig, so I'm going in with a slightly like redder purple in between the other stripes to accentuate that kind of pinky that you can see in the imperial purple and as it dries, so that you can just see a hint of the two-tone as it dries. It's not extreme. And then I'm darkening up this watercolor. I always tend to go lighter handed, and so which means I end up going over things a couple times, which I guess can be good, it could be bad, because you can't go backwards. You put too much or go too dark, it's very hard. You can lighten up a little bit and stuff, but there are times where I think I go too light on things, and it also can look overworked and stuff if you go too light-handed and go too many layers. I think it's a better, fresher look, and not so tight and controlled if you kind of get it closest as you can to what you're going for, in I guess in as few amount of layers or paint passes as possible. That's again what I'm doing over here. And I just giving that, accentuating that two-toned look a little bit. And again, why, it's not like fully dry, but going in and darkening things, next to the stem. Because some of that purple gets pretty dark in there. And so skipping back over to the Kiwis. So I put in the lines, the darker lines where the darker seeds sit. And there I'm just kind of trying to blend it in a little bit and not make it such a stark difference where each of the lines are. I think I'm probably overly fiddling a little bit with it. Because they're different. You can see the little lines, but, I think I'm just being a little too, trying to blend the seeds in there a little too controlled, But here at the bottom, I'm darkening up where it gets next to the core, darkening that up a bit more. Again, like I tend to always go a little lighter handed for better or for worse. So a lot of times I'll have to darken things a few times, and depending on how much water you use, which again can be good or bad, So here I'm trying to fix up some of the seeds, or like the pockets that the seeds sit in, and make sure there's enough of them and stuff like that. Because when I go in with a darker color, you're not going to really, you should stay away from, once you go in with a darker seed color, those little black seeds in it, if you try to go back and do any of that stuff, that black color will bleed out. So here I'm going in and just giving a little hint of the skin, that little hairy tan skin. You can see just a hint of it. And so kind of trying to loosely do that, purposely kind of going outside the lines a little bit to kind of represent some of the hair. So, and while that's drying and the middle seed things are drying, so where I painted in that orangish yellow color of the fleshy seed kind of part, I'm going in and darkening up some of that flesh color to kind of accentuate the fleshy seed parts a little bit more. Tad bit tedious, but I think it needs it in certain spots. Because you really aren't seeing it as much as you can in the picture and stuff like that. So I'm trying to kind of go in there and give it a little boost. But I know some people don't like the tedious little parts like that. Like I don't mind stuff like that. Like I thoroughly enjoy painting. There's times where, I want something to get done and I will do things like quick or cut corners or whatever because I want to get it finished and stuff like that. But I genuinely like and try to remind myself, like, enjoy painting. And so not to get caught up or frustrated with some of the little details and stuff. So not to bore you guys completely, trying to skip ahead with, some of the seed part. So you can kind of see what I'm doing. I don't think you need to see every little, every little stroke of it. You kind of get the idea. But I think that goes a long way to accentuate a little bit more those fleshy little seed bits. I don't know if it's actually seeds or if it's part of the flesh or what. I'm just doing what I've seen. I don't think as many times as I've had figs and stuff like that, I don't think I've ever had like a fresh fig. Like it's always been dried or something like that. So it's kind of intriguing to paint them. So here we're zooming in a little bit because we're doing the black seeds in the kiwi, which again is a little bit tedious, but a little bit fun. So you kind of, like I was saying before, you kind of want to make sure you've got those seed pockets and as many of them and kind of where you want them. Because once you start going in with the black or the darker color, I doubt it's black, because I don't usually use black. It's probably like a mixture of brown and blue or what have you, or sepia and blue or something like that. But anyway, it's so dark against that light green. Like if you tried to go back and change some of that stuff, it would be, you'd make a mess. That's what I'm trying to say. So you kind of want to try to have, as you're going lighter to darker, you want to try to, or at least I try to, make sure I've got that stuff where I want it, so that I'm not stuck unhappy with one of the parts because the dark would run or what have you. So this is kind of like I'm not matching every seed from the picture, nor was I matching, every single place that, like the pockets were and stuff like that. You're kind of just going in and kind of doing it loosely and where it kind of looks like it, I think it'd be crazy to try to match exactly. I think, some people don't like to use photos or any kind of references and stuff like that. And I think it's super important. I think that the key is not to be a slave to the reference, but to use it to get the visual that you need, and then then don't use the parts that you don't want to use. But talking about that, I want to also this year, talking about, one of the goals is finishing sketchbooks and being able to do the sketchbook review and finishing those. I also want to be a little bit more free. So I've been teaching myself watercolor for a while now, and a lot of that, I'm trying to emulate the picture. And so that's the way I'm learning how to use the watercolors and manipulate them to get them to look the way I want them to look. But now I think I'm to the point, I want to push my art a little bit more, where I'm making art that says a little bit more creative than just recreating pictures. Even though I change a lot sometimes or what have you, I want to be a little bit more creative on the artwork and kind of coming into a style or a couple different styles or what have you, and playing around with that. Also, like I said, with the sketchbooks, I've gotten the Neocolor 2, which I thought would help me kind of get out of the perfectionist a little bit. You can't, even if you sharpen them, you can't really get too much of a point. So you kind of have to be a little bit looser with them to begin with. And so learning and playing with those a little bit with the sketchbooks. Also, I've got the acrylic markers, which I love. And then I want to get back into alcohol markers. I want, I know they say with a channel you should stick to, one medium or stick to, I just don't want to do that. I want to do, the main handful of mediums that I like to do and do it. And I think there's more people out there like me that want to kind of play in their sketchbook with different mediums, not just, although a lot of what I'll do is watercolor and gouache, because that is I love to do the watercolor and gouache. But I really want to try and push myself learning, to be a little bit more creative with other mediums and stuff. So skipping ahead again, I don't want to bore you guys to death with doing 10 million of the same seeds and stuff like that. But if anybody did follow along or do artwork along with this on the Paint With Me today, I would love to see it. If you want to post it or what have you, or message me and tell me what you're working on and how it's coming along and stuff. I would love to see that. So again, here I'm kind of darkening it up. Like I said, I always end up going a little lighter and end up darkening up things because, again, you can't go backwards. So I guess it's a decent habit. So there I kind of like accentuated the hairs a little bit. Now I'm jumping back over onto this fig to darken it up a little bit in some sections, because here's where I'm kind of, zeroing in on the picture. Is there anything that I don't have or that I want to represent in there? I think to help make it look better or pop a little bit more. So here I am playing around with trying to give it that waxy look in certain spots, like where fruit kind of, the skin of it has that kind of cloudy look a little bit. So coming to the end here, just doing last touches, kind of putting some shadows in where we need to, little bits here and there. But thank you guys for coming along with me. I hope, don't forget to like and subscribe and let me know what you're working on below. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.